and in our own setting, there's a bit of disconnect between the research world and what's our engagement with policymaker. That disconnect is there. And for me, I can't really blame any researcher because researchers are not meant to implement. It is for policymakers to look at the evidence, to call for the evidence, to call for the experts to talk about their work. But if they're not doing that, I think as researchers as well, we also need to continue to push our work, share our work. For instance, I just completed a review, a research paper looking at AMR and how the AMR National Action Plan across 14 African countries and how they engage marginalized population. You know, AMR is a global public health problem. So once I was done, like in the past few weeks now, we are looking for ways to engage with African CDC, to engage with national AMR coordinators. We're looking for ways to also send our paper. It's published now. We send our paper to WHO for some level of awareness about our findings. So that's how you actually push your work from the researchers aspect. But I know in our own setting, even if you push your work, it depends on the political will for them to actually say, oh, let's use this work to advance knowledge. But we don't have to stop. We have to try as much as possible to engage the public with our work as much as we can. So there's a major gap, and you've identified something that is important: translation of evidence into policy and practice. Compared to the Western world, where they actually do focused research, they do research because they've seen a need for it and they actually want to use it to implement or advance things. For instance, my PhD now is actually I'm working directly with the Scottish government because my findings is going to actually translate to pandemic preparedness in Scotland. That's what I'm working on. Because and that's why they fund that particular PhD so that I can do my analysis, I can do my research, so I can translate that into policy brief or my findings can be useful to them to protect vulnerable population in the next pandemics, which we don't know. But right now, I don't think anything like that is going on in our own setting where we look back at what happens during COVID and we're trying to look for ways to actually improve how we prepare against public health pandemic like pandemic that can affect our public health greatly or that can affect our healthcare system. We're not really doing anything to reflect. So, but we also actually have to actually look for ways to do that through our own ways, through our own platform, maybe advocacy, talk about your work, and all sorts of things. But you've identified a very good area, and we have people called implementation. We have an area called implementation research. We have something called implementation science, and we have implementation scientists as well, where their own role is to look at the evidence that is available and see ways we can actually use this evidence to advance knowledge. So after this call, I will urge you to check what we mean by implementation science, implementation researchers, or implementation research as well. You will see different things, and it's really a new area that people are actually going into now. That how can we do research that we translate into policy and practice? And also another angle you can come in from is to come in from the policy angle. You can even be a policymaker, maybe a contest where you become governor, you become president of your state, or governor of your state, or you become chairperson and you start using the evidence. That's also another way, really. And we encourage people to actually do that as well, researchers to go into politics. But even if you're not going to politics as a researcher, there's a way you can actually make sure that the evidence that we have available is actually translated into policy and practice. And that's what implementation scientists, implementation research is all about. How can we use those evidence to advance or to implement, to make sure that we use those knowledge and we translate them into policy and practice as much as we can. But if you look at it, it's not really a core role of researcher. Researcher is they are there to generate the evidence. But right now, I think researchers also have to look for ways to push their work as much as possible so that policymaker can see what they found out and they can use those things to advance knowledge. And one thing that people are doing right now is to engage with organizations that actually need the work. Right now, we know that National Action Plan for AMR is actually being coordinated by WHO. So what we did was that we look for WHO, we look for African CDC and other stakeholders. We send our paper to them. We write some form of brief on our findings so that they can actually use them. So as researchers, I also agree that we should not sit and just wait for our work to be used. It's the role of the university as well to connect the industry and to connect the researchers together, make sure that we are connecting, we are communicating our work, we are using our work to influence policy and practice as much as we can.